The Saturday morning of my younger sister, Seraphina's wedding at the historic Willowmere estate in the wine country outside Charlottesville, Virginia. I pulled my car up to the front gates in the emerald green silk dress I had bought for the occasion, holding the small wrapped gift I had brought for her, and I watched my sister's wedding coordinator walk out through the gravel driveway toward my car with a laminated map in her hand and a tight, apologetic smile on her face. She told me that my sister had specifically requested that I enter the property through the service entrance at the back of the estate, because the front entrance was being used exclusively for immediate family and their guests, and that I would be directed to a small table in the service wing for the reception. I sat in my car for a long moment with both hands on the steering wheel, and I understood that this was the day my sister had finally gone too far. Before I tell you what happened 90 minutes later, when the general manager of Willowmere walked out of his office into the main lobby, saw me standing near the service corridor in my green silk dress, and called me the word that made my sister drop her champagne flute in the middle of the reception hall, I want to ask you something. Where in the world are you watching this from tonight? And have you ever pulled up to a place that actually belonged to you and been told by your own family to use the back door? Drop it in the comments. I am telling this story because I think there is a very specific kind of silence that settles into your chest when a sister does something like this, and I want to know who else has lived inside that silence. My name is Rosalind. I am 38 years old, and I am the owner of Willowmere Estate, a 160-acre historic property in Albemarle County, Virginia, that I purchased 4 years ago and have operated since then as a boutique wedding and event venue. Willowmere was built in 1847, and when I bought it from a bankruptcy auction, it was a crumbling Italianate mansion sitting on fallow farmland, and most of the people I knew told me I was making the biggest financial mistake of my life. I spent the next 2.5 years and most of my life savings restoring the main house, rebuilding the gardens, converting the old carriage house into a reception hall, and turning Willowmere into what it is today, which is one of the most sought-after wedding venues in Central Virginia. We book out 2 full calendar years in advance. Last year, we hosted 73 weddings, 14 corporate retreats, and 3 philanthropic galas. I am the sole owner. My family knew almost none of this. I do not mean that they knew a vague outline. I mean that they genuinely had no idea. I want to tell you how that was possible because the answer is the whole story. I grew up in a town called Mechanicsburg, Virginia, in a family of 4. My father, Dexter, worked as a mid-level manager at a regional bank, and my mother, Arlene, had been a legal secretary at a small firm for her entire adult life. My younger sister, Seraphina, was 3 years behind me, and from the time she was born, my mother had decided that Seraphina was the daughter who was going to reflect well on her, and that I was the daughter who was going to be tolerated. I do not know why my mother decided this. I have thought about it for many years, and the closest I can come is that Seraphina looked like my mother, and I looked like my father's side of the family, and something about that visual reminder made my mother warm to one of us in ways she never warmed to the other. I left Mechanicsburg at 18 to attend the College of William and Mary on a partial academic scholarship. I majored in finance. After graduation, I took a job at an investment bank in Richmond, and over the next 12 years, I built a career in commercial real estate finance that eventually moved me to a private equity firm in Charlottesville, specializing in the acquisition and renovation of historic properties. I was good at it. By the time I was 32, I had developed a reputation in Central Virginia as one of the younger women in the commercial real estate space, and I had built up enough personal capital that when a certain crumbling mansion came up for auction, I was in a position to bid on it, buy it, and begin the enormous project of restoring it. I was able to do all of this because I had spent 12 years being extraordinarily careful with my money, and because I had learned, very early in life, not to depend on anyone. Seraphina had taken a different path. She had attended a small liberal arts college in North Carolina, had majored in art history, had moved back to Mechanicsburg after graduation, and had spent her 20s working a series of jobs that she did not particularly enjoy. She had gotten engaged and unengaged twice before finally meeting her current fiancé, Graham Ainsworth, at a charity auction in Richmond 3 years ago. Graham was the son of a prominent Richmond family that owned a chain of automotive dealerships, and my mother had been openly thrilled that Serafina was marrying into what my mother called real money. Graham was nice enough. He was not particularly interesting to me, but he seemed to genuinely love my sister, and I had never had any personal objection to him. The problem between Serafina and me had always been Serafina. From the time we were small children, she had treated me with the particular contempt that some younger sisters reserve for older sisters they have decided to compete with and lose to only on the terms they control. Serafina had never forgiven me for being the older sister who left Mechanicsburg first. She had never forgiven me for being the daughter who had gone to a better college. She had never forgiven me for moving to Charlottesville and building a professional life that she did not understand and could not mirror. And she had, very specifically, decided that the way to manage her resentment of me was to systematically exclude me from the parts of her life that mattered most. I had not been invited to her bridal shower. She had told my mother that she had decided to keep the shower intimate. I had not been invited to the bachelorette weekend at a beach house in the Outer Banks. She had told me, in a brief text message, that she had decided to limit the bachelorette to her closest friends. I had not been asked to be a bridesmaid. She had told me that she was having only 6 bridesmaids and that all of the spots had been filled by her college friends and Graham's sister. I had absorbed all of these small exclusions, the way I had absorbed every small exclusion from my family since I was 6 years old, which was quietly and without a scene. But the wedding I had been invited to, the wedding my sister was holding at Willowmere Estate, my property. Yes, you read that correctly. Serafina had booked Willowmere for her wedding without knowing that I owned it. I need to explain how this happened, because it sounds impossible, and it is not quite as impossible as it sounds. When Serafina and Graham got engaged, they began looking for venues, and my mother, who was very involved in the wedding planning, had heard from a friend in Richmond about a beautiful historic estate in Albemarle County that was becoming a popular wedding destination. My mother had looked it up online, had fallen in love with the photographs, and had told Serafina it was the most beautiful venue she had ever seen. Serafina had contacted the venue's booking office, had negotiated a date about a year and a half out, had signed a contract, had paid the deposit, and had locked in her wedding date. None of this involved me, because Willowmere's daily operations are run by my general manager, a remarkable woman named Beatrix Lowell, whom I hired 2 years ago to take over the day-to-day of the venue so that I could focus on strategic growth, new acquisitions, and the business side of the company. Beatrix handles all booking inquiries, all contract negotiations, all client meetings, and all event day operations. I show up at Willowmere maybe once a week, usually for financial meetings or to check in on major renovations. Most clients never meet me. Most clients do not know my name. The Willowmere website lists Beatrix as the general manager and does not feature my name at all, because I had decided early in the business that I preferred to operate quietly. When my mother had sent me the wedding invitation 6 months before the event, I had noticed the venue immediately. I had read the address on the invitation, Willowmere Estate. I had then gone into our internal booking system on my laptop and I had looked up the Ainsworth Mechanicsburg wedding. It was on our calendar. The contract had been signed. The deposit had been paid. My sister was getting married at my venue, and she had absolutely no idea. I had thought about telling her immediately. I had thought about calling my mother and saying, "Did you know your older daughter owns the place you booked for your younger daughter's wedding?" I had thought about picking up the phone and explaining the entire situation in about 2 minutes. But I had not done any of those things because I had wanted to see what was going to happen. I had wanted to see whether my sister was going to treat me any differently as the wedding approached, now that she was getting married at what she believed was an anonymous luxury venue. I had wanted to see whether my mother was going to mention the venue to me in any way that suggested a flicker of curiosity about the strange coincidence. I had wanted to see, in other words, whether anyone in my family was going to treat me like a person with a life they might want to understand. None of them did. My sister did not call me to ask my opinion on anything. My mother talked about the venue to me once, briefly, and told me I would love it when I saw it. Nobody in my family asked me what I did for a living in any detailed way in the 6 months leading up to the wedding. The booking went through the normal Willowmere process. Beatrix handled every meeting. My sister had a walkthrough of the property 2 months before the wedding. She had toured the main house, the carriage house reception hall, the gardens, and the bridal suite. She had chosen her menu. She had signed her final guest count. And through all of it, she had no idea that the property belonged to me. The day of the wedding, I had planned to arrive early, in the green silk dress I had bought specifically for the occasion, and to enter through the front entrance like every other invited guest. I had not planned to announce myself as the owner. I had not planned to make a scene. I had planned to simply attend my sister's wedding, to smile in the photographs, to give my toast as the maid of. Well, not as the maid of honor, because I had not been invited to be one. I had planned to give a brief sister toast during the reception, because my mother had insisted that I be given 2 minutes on the microphone to say something warm about Serafina. I had written the toast already. It was on a note card in my clutch. I had not planned for the service entrance. I had pulled up to the front gates of Willowmere at 10:45 in the morning, because the wedding ceremony was scheduled for noon, and I had wanted to arrive early. The wedding coordinator, a woman named Elspeth who had been hired by my sister and my mother independently of Willowmere's own event team, had been stationed at the front gates with a clipboard. Elspeth did not work for Willowmere. She was a private coordinator my mother had hired to run the logistics of the wedding day. Elspeth had never seen me before, and she had no idea who I was. She approached my car with the laminated map and the apologetic smile, and she explained, very politely, that my sister had requested that I enter through the service entrance on the east side of the property, and that my seat for the reception would be located in a smaller area adjacent to the main hall. I rolled down my window and looked at Elspeth. I am sorry. You are telling me that Serafina has specifically requested that her older sister enter through the service entrance at her wedding. Miss Rosalind, I am so sorry. I know this is unusual. The bride was very specific about the seating arrangements and the entrance protocol. I was asked to direct you personally to the service entrance. I do not know the reason. I am just the coordinator. And my seat at the reception is where, exactly? Your seat is in the service wing of the carriage house. It is a smaller space that opens off of the main reception hall. The bride asked that you be seated there rather than in the main hall. I took a slow breath. I looked at Elspeth. Elspeth was a young woman, probably 28 or 29, and she was clearly deeply uncomfortable delivering this message. She was not the villain. She was doing her job. Elspeth, thank you for telling me. I am going to park my car, and I am going to enter through the service entrance. Please tell my sister that I received her message. Miss Rosalind, I am so sorry. It is not your fault. Go back to your post. I drove my car around the east side of the property on the gravel service road that led past the maintenance buildings and the staff parking area. I parked in the small employee lot. I sat in my car for about 2 minutes. I did not cry. I had passed the point of crying over my sister a very long time ago. What I felt instead was a kind of quiet cold, the feeling you get when something has finally clarified itself after years of being almost clear. I got out of the car. I walked across the gravel parking area in my emerald green silk dress and my low heels, holding my small wrapped gift, and I entered Willowmere through the service entrance at the back of the main house. I knew the service entrance well. I had walked through it hundreds of times during the renovation. I had picked out the paint color for the service corridor myself. I had approved the tile on the floor. Inside, the service corridor was humming with catering staff, floral designers, and the firm's own event team. A caterer named Tomas, who had been working weddings at Willowmere for the past 3 years, and who had seen me dozens of times, spotted me from the kitchen doorway and immediately began walking toward me with a confused expression. Miss Rosalind, what are you doing in the service corridor? You always come in through the front. Hi, Tomas. It is a long story. Please do not make a scene. I am attending this wedding as a guest today. I am going to quietly make my way into the main hall. Miss Rosalind, you are the owner. You do not need to enter through the service corridor. Tomas, please. It is a family situation. I do not want you to mention it to anyone. Just go back to the kitchen. Tomas looked at me for a long moment with the expression of a man who had clearly understood that something was very wrong. He nodded, slowly, and he walked back toward the kitchen. I could tell from his posture that he was going to find Beatrix within 60 seconds. I was not wrong. I was standing in the service corridor outside the main house lobby, trying to decide whether to proceed into the ceremony area or to wait for the ceremony to start, when I saw Beatrix Lowell striding toward me from the direction of the main lobby, with the precise, fast walk of a woman who had just been told something she could not believe. Beatrix is in her mid-50s, tall, with short gray hair and the kind of calm authority she developed over 20 years of running luxury hotels in Europe before I hired her to run Willowmere. She was wearing her event day uniform, which was a sharp navy blue suit with a small silver Willowmere pin on the lapel. She stopped in front of me in the service corridor, looked at my dress, looked at the gift in my hand, and did not bother to lower her voice. "Rosalind, what on earth are you doing in my service corridor on a wedding day?" "Beatrix, I'm attending the wedding as a guest." "The Ainsworth Mechanicsburg wedding. Yes, I know. Rosalind, why are you in my service corridor and not in my main lobby?" "Beatrix, the bride of this wedding is my younger sister." Beatrix froze. Her sharp eyes went through a rapid sequence of expressions. Confusion, then realization, then the cold professional anger of a woman who had just understood that something unacceptable was happening at her venue. "Your sister, Rosalind. Are you telling me that the bride of this wedding is your younger sister, and she has no idea that this venue is owned by you, and she has somehow directed you to enter through the service entrance?" "Yes, that is exactly what I am telling you." "Rosalind, how long have you known about this booking?" 6 months. I saw her name on the invitation, and I looked up the booking in our system." "And you did not tell me?" "I did not tell anyone. I wanted to see what would happen." Beatrix stared at me. Then she said, in the precise quiet voice she used when she was furious, "I am going to find the general manager of this property, and I am going to have him come and greet you in my main lobby within 5 minutes." "Beatrix, you are the general manager." "Rosalind, I know. I am telling you what I am about to do. I am going to formally greet you. I am going to escort you into the main lobby of Willowmere Estate. And if your sister is in that lobby when I do, she is going to learn, in real time, exactly who you are." "Beatrix." "Rosalind, I'm going to say something, and I want you to listen to me carefully. I have worked at luxury properties for 20 years. I have seen many terrible family dynamics at weddings. I have seen brides who hated their mothers, grooms who hated their fathers, cousins who would not sit next to each other. I have never, not once in my entire career, seen a bride ask her older sister to enter through the service entrance at a wedding. I have also never, in my entire career, seen an older sister respond to such a request by quietly complying because she did not want to make a scene on her sister's wedding day. What I am witnessing right now in this service corridor is the kind of thing I retired from European hotel management to stop witnessing. I am not going to allow it in my venue, Rosalind. I am not going to allow it in your venue. Do you understand me?" "Beatrix, please do not turn this into a scene." "It is not going to be a scene. It is going to be a correction. I am going to correct a very bad situation with precision and grace, which is what general managers do. I am going to walk you into the main lobby now. I am going to greet you publicly. And then I am going to let the situation unfold in whatever direction it needs to unfold." I looked at Beatrix. I looked at her navy suit and her silver pin and her short gray hair and her sharp, intelligent eyes, and I thought about the last 4 years of our working partnership, and I thought about the moment when I had hired her and she had told me, at our very first meeting, that she believed in running luxury venues with both warmth and standards. I thought about my sister in a white dress, somewhere in the bridal suite on the 2nd floor of the main house, probably having her makeup touched up. "Okay, Beatrix, let's go." Beatrix took my arm. She walked me out of the service corridor. We moved through a small side door into the main lobby of Willowmere, which was a large, beautifully appointed room with marble floors, 12-foot ceilings, a crystal chandelier that I had personally selected during the renovation, and a grand staircase that curved up to the 2nd floor. The lobby was full of wedding guests checking in with Elspeth. H and her assistants, being escorted to the ceremony site in the gardens out back. Beatrix walked me into the middle of the lobby. Her voice, when she spoke, was not loud, but it was precise, and it carried the way certain trained voices carry in rooms with marble floors. Ms. Holloway, welcome to Willowmere. I am so sorry that your arrival was not properly managed this morning. I should have been at the front gate to greet you personally. Please accept my apology on behalf of the entire Willowmere team. Elspeth, the private wedding coordinator, turned at the sound of Beatrix's voice. Her face went through a complicated sequence. Beatrix, I am sorry. Did you say Ms. Holloway? Yes, Elspeth. Ms. Holloway, the owner of Willowmere Estate. The woman who purchased this property 4 years ago and who paid for the restoration you have been admiring all morning. I was apparently not informed by your team that the owner was attending this wedding today, or I would have adjusted the arrival protocols personally. Elspeth's face went white. I watched her brain try to reconcile two completely incompatible pieces of information. The woman she had just directed to the service entrance was the owner of the venue. The bride had specifically asked that this woman be routed through the service entrance. The bride was the sister of the owner. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. Beatrix, I did not know. The bride did not tell me. She simply gave me instructions about where to direct her sister. She did not mention that. I am so sorry. I did not know. Elspeth, I know you did not know. You are not the person who did something wrong today. The person who did something wrong today is currently in the bridal suite on the 2nd floor, and I am going to ask you to go upstairs, right now, and inform her that the owner of Willowmere Estate, her older sister, is standing in the main lobby and would like to speak with her briefly before the ceremony begins. Do you understand? Elspeth was nodding so fast her head was almost blurring. Yes, I will go right now. Wait, I said it quietly. Beatrix and Elspeth both turned to look at me. Beatrix, I do not want to pull Serafina out of the bridal suite on her wedding day. I do not want to make her cry before her ceremony. I do not want to ruin her wedding. I want the ceremony to happen. I want her to have her moment. I want to attend the reception. I will handle this with my sister after the ceremony, during the reception. I am going to need you to let me manage it in my own way. Beatrix looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded. Rosalind, it is your venue. It is your wedding. It is your sister. I am going to follow your lead, but I want you to know one thing. You are going to sit at the head table for this reception. You are not going to sit in the service wing. I am going to quietly reassign seating, and I am going to make sure that the table cards are adjusted before the reception begins. Your sister is not going to be told about the reseating until she walks into the main hall. Is that acceptable? Yes, Beatrix, that is acceptable. Good. Elspeth, please tell the bride nothing at this time. She will proceed with the ceremony as planned. I will handle the reception seating from here. Please go back to your post at the front gates. Elspeth nodded and fled toward the front of the property. I walked with Beatrix into the ceremony area, which was set up in the main garden at the back of the estate under a large white pergola I had commissioned 3 years ago from a local blacksmith in Charlottesville. I took a seat in one of the back rows of white wooden folding chairs because I did not want to draw attention. The ceremony began at noon, exactly on schedule. My sister Serafina walked down the aisle on my father's arm in a beautiful ivory silk gown. She looked radiant. She did not scan the audience for my face. She walked directly to the pergola where Graham was waiting and the ceremony proceeded. The officiant gave a warm homily. Vows were exchanged. Rings were placed. The couple kissed. The string quartet played. Everyone applauded. Serafina and Graham walked back down the aisle hand in hand, smiling at their guests, and they did not once look at me. After the ceremony, the guests were directed to the carriage house, which had been restored and converted into the main reception hall during my 2nd year of ownership. The reception hall is a beautiful space. It has original oak beams, restored limestone walls, and a double-height ceiling with a row of crystal chandeliers. It can seat 240 guests comfortably. I walked into the reception hall slowly. I was one of the last guests to enter. Beatrix was standing near the main entrance, and she gave me a small nod. I could see, from across the room, that a new place setting had been added at the head table, in the seat immediately to the right of the bride, and that the name card on that seat now read, Rosalind Holloway, owner, Willowmere Estate. The room was mostly full by the time I walked to the head table. Serafina and Graham were in the middle of the head table, facing the room. My parents were seated on the left side of Serafina. Graham's parents were on the right side of Graham. There had been 6 other seats at the head table, 4 for the bridal party members closest to the couple, and 2 that had been left empty for Graham's immediate family. The seating arrangement had been meticulously planned by Serafina and my mother over many months. I walked up to the head table. My sister looked up from her champagne flute. She saw me approaching. Her brow furrowed in mild confusion. Then she saw my name card in the seat next to her. Her face went very still. Rosalind, what are you doing at the head table? Serafina, hello. Rosalind, you are not supposed to be at the head table. Your seat is in the service wing. There has been a mistake with the place cards. There has not been a mistake, Serafina. I was just reseated a few minutes ago. By whom? Who moved your seat card? Where is Elspeth? By the general manager of this venue, a woman named Beatrix Lowell. She personally reseated me before the reception began. Why would the general manager of this venue reseat you? She does not know you. She does not know any of us. Rosalind, please go sit in your assigned seat. This is embarrassing. I sat down in the seat at the head table. I placed my small wrapped gift on the table in front of me. I picked up my champagne flute and took a small sip. The head table was now fully seated. The guests in the reception hall were watching the small commotion at the head table with the slightly curious attention of people who did not quite know what was happening. And that was when Beatrix Lowell walked out of her office door at the back of the reception hall and crossed the room toward us. She was still wearing her navy blue suit. She was carrying a small handwritten note on Willowmere stationery. She stopped at the head table, directly in front of my sister and Graham, and she cleared her throat politely. Good afternoon. My sincere congratulations to the bride and groom. I am so sorry to interrupt the beginning of your reception. I am Beatrix Lowell, the general manager of Willowmere Estate. I wanted to come out personally to welcome the owner of Willowmere to her own property this afternoon, which is something I realized with great embarrassment that my staff had failed to do properly upon her arrival this morning. Owner Holloway, I apologize again, and I want to formally welcome you to Willowmere on this beautiful day. She turned with a small, polite smile to me, and she said it clearly, in the measured voice she had used for 20 years in European luxury hotels, the voice of a general manager formally acknowledging a proprietor in front of her own guests. Owner Holloway, on behalf of the entire Willowmere team, welcome home. The sound of my sister Serafina's champagne flute hitting the wooden floor of the reception hall was sharp and precise. The glass did not shatter, because the floor was a heritage oak that I had selected for its forgiveness, but the flute bounced once and rolled away from the head table. The room went silent for about 2 seconds. 239 people all turned to look at the head table at the same time. My sister's face was the color of chalk. Her hand was still in the air where it had been holding the champagne flute. Her mouth was slightly open. Her eyes were locked on Beatrix, and then on me, and then on Beatrix again, and her brain was trying to process the word owner that had just been used in connection with my name, in connection with her wedding venue. My mother, sitting on the other side of Serafina, had gone very still. My father had put his fork down. Graham's parents were looking at the head table with the polite, confused faces of people who had just walked into the middle of a family story they had not been told. My sister opened her mouth. She closed it. She opened it again. Rosalind, what did she just call you? She called me owner, Serafina, because I am the owner of Willowmere Estate. Rosalind, no, that is not possible. That is absolutely not possible. This venue is owned by a company. I signed a contract with a company. Yes, you did. You signed a contract with Holloway Heritage Properties, LLC, which is a company I own. Willowmere is one of the properties under that company. I bought it 4 years ago at auction. I spent 2.5 years restoring it. I opened it as a wedding and event venue 2 years ago. Beatrix here is the general manager I hired to run the day-to-day. I am the sole owner. Rosalind, this cannot be happening. Serafina, I have known that you were having your wedding at Willowmere for 6 months. I saw your name in our booking system the day Mom sent the invitation. I have been waiting to see whether you or Mom would ever bring it up with me, would ever ask me about my work, would ever show a flicker of curiosity about what I actually do with my life. Neither of you did. And this morning, when I pulled up to the front gates of my own property in my green silk dress, the coordinator you hired told me that you had specifically requested that I enter through the service entrance, and that my seat at your reception would be in the service wing. I am not going to yell at you, Serafina. I am not going to make a scene. I am simply going to tell you that you tried to send me to the back door of my own venue at your wedding, and you had no idea, because you have spent your entire life not looking at me. The reception hall was still silent. 239 guests were now completely engaged in what was happening at the head table. My mother had started crying, silently, with the hand that had been holding her napkin now pressed flat against her mouth. My father was staring at the table in front of him with the stricken look of a man who was realizing, in real time, that he had been letting his wife and his younger daughter mistreat his older daughter for 38 years, while telling himself it was none of his business. Graham, my new brother-in-law, looked at me with the expression of a man who had just been handed a family mystery he had not been told about before his wedding day. He then looked at my sister. He then looked back at me. Rosalind, I did not know. I swear to God I did not know. I would have never if I had known. Graham, you did not do anything wrong. This is not your situation. This is between Serafina and me and our mother. I am not upset with you. Please enjoy your reception with your new wife. Serafina had started crying too by then. Not the performative crying she did at family events. The real crying of a woman who had just been forced to see something she had been refusing to see for many years. Rosalind, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. Serafina, I am not going to accept an apology today. Today is your wedding day. I am going to sit here at this head table in my rightful seat, and I am going to eat this beautiful dinner that my catering staff has prepared. I am going to give the short toast I wrote on the note card in my clutch because I love you enough to still give it. And then I am going to go home at the end of the evening. You and I are going to have a real conversation in a few weeks, when you and Graham are back from your honeymoon, and you are going to apologize to me for a great many things, not just for today, and I am going to listen. But I am not going to forgive you today, because today is not the day for that work. Serafina nodded. She could not speak. I stood up. I raised my champagne flute. Beatrix, who had been standing quietly near the head table, tapped a small silver spoon against a water glass to get the room's attention. The remaining murmurs of the crowd died down. Everyone, I am going to give a very short sister toast to the bride. Thank you for your patience. I turned to Serafina. I looked her directly in the eye. I had written this toast 2 weeks earlier, before I had known about the service entrance, back when I had still been trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. Serafina, you are my younger sister. I have known you your entire life. I remember the day Mom and Dad brought you home from the hospital, because I was 3 years old and I was allowed to hold you in my lap on the couch while Mom took a picture. I remember teaching you how to ride your first bike in the driveway of our house on Maple Street. I remember every birthday I spent watching you blow out candles. I have loved you for 35 years, and I will love you for the rest of my life, even on the days when loving you is very complicated. I want to wish you and Graham a long and happy marriage. I want to wish you the kind of love that grows easier with time. And I want to welcome Graham into our family, which is, like most families, imperfect but real, to the bride and groom. The room raised their glasses. People applauded. I sat down. I did not look at my sister because I did not want her to feel more guilty than she already did. The reception proceeded. Dinner was served. My catering staff did a beautiful job. Beatrix circulated quietly throughout the hall, doing her general manager's rounds, and every time she passed the head table she gave me a small professional nod. My mother did not speak to me during the dinner. My father reached over and squeezed my hand once, briefly, and whispered, "I am so sorry, Rosalind. I have been a coward. I told him we would talk later. My sister and I did not have the conversation that night. I drove back to my condo in downtown Charlottesville at 10:30 in the evening, took off the green silk dress, washed my face, and went to sleep. My sist. R called me 2 weeks later after she returned from her honeymoon. The conversation was the longest conversation we had ever had as adults. It lasted almost 4 hours. She apologized for many things. She apologized for the service entrance. She apologized for years of small exclusions. She apologized for having been the kind of sister who had never once asked me what I did for a living. She cried. I cried a little too, eventually. We are still working on our relationship, Serafina and I, 2 years after the wedding. We have coffee together once a month when she comes to Charlottesville. We have started to rebuild something small and careful. My mother has also started trying, in her limited way, to be a different kind of mother to me. My father has become, in his quiet, reserved way, the father I always wished I had. None of it is perfect. All of it is real. Willowmere is thriving. We hosted our 100th wedding of the year last month. Beatrix is still my general manager, and she remains one of the most important people in my professional life. I still walk into Willowmere most weeks through the main entrance, and I still greet Tomas in the kitchen, and I still approve every major decision personally. The lobby where Beatrix greeted me as owner Holloway has become, in my private memory, the place where I stopped being my family's backdoor sister and started being the woman I had actually built myself into. Here is what I have learned. Some families will try to send you to the service entrance of rooms you own, and they will do it because they have never bothered to look at your life. You cannot argue them out of their blindness. You can only walk through the door you choose and trust that the right person in your life will meet you in the lobby and call you by your real name. If this story moved you tonight, please hit that like button, because every like helps this story reach another woman who has been underestimated by her own family for her entire life. Drop a comment and tell me, has your family ever tried to put you in a smaller room than the one you belong in? I read every single comment, and I promise yours will be seen. And if you want to hear more true stories like mine, please subscribe and turn on the bell, because I share a new story every week. Take care of yourselves out there. And remember, you do not have to enter through the back door of a building you own. Walk through the front. They will catch up.